Welcome back to my renovation vlog. This is week 9 after quite a few weeks off of this because we've been incredibly sick. And now that we're all feeling better, I am back to my recording studio, which is my office, which is in my house, in my bedroom. And I have some amazing updates to share, so stick around. If we haven't met yet, my name is Karen and I am renovating my house. I am doing the planning, the design, and for the first time going to manage the construction myself, which is very exciting for me. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel here to get an update every single Monday. Well, mostly every Monday, unless I'm really sick, in which case I just may have to skip it from time to time. And I'm going to be sharing my big wins and essential lessons from one very cost-conscious homeowner to another. And that is something that we're going to talk a lot about this week, is all of the cost-conscious decisions that I've had to make. So let's dive in. So the first thing that I want to talk about is my stairs. And I think a few weeks ago I shared that I had received a few different quotes back. Some of them were quite expensive for the custom stairs that I had designed. And I think during the break, the 3-week break that I was off and didn't record, I got one of my other quotes back, which came in at $97,000. And then another one, which had a slightly different design, but was sort of an all wood option, even though I had in my mind that I wanted metal. And that option came in at $12,000 plus the guardrails. So very, very different options in terms of pricing based on the materials that you choose. And so that was it wasn't necessarily eye-opening that they would be different, but it was shocking just how different the prices would be just based on those material differences. Because, to go from 12,000, plus you're talking some railing, so maybe it would have been up to 20,000, between 20,000 and 97,000. I mean, that's a huge difference. And I didn't expect it to be that vast of a price jump. So that was really insightful. The other thing that I learned, which is really, really good information when you're designing your own stairs, is that if you want some really fancy stairs like I do, I want my stairs to be quite a feature in my reno. And so I've been looking at these different kinds of like floating options and cantilevered options that are going to be amazing show-stopping pieces. But the price for landings is actually insane. And so just by cutting out some landings, you can save a ton of money. I'm going to show you what I mean. I'm going to flip over to my layout here. Okay, so here's my layout, and this is the modified version of my stair layout that I have changed from the original. So what I'll just show you is, I'll just mock it up really, really quickly here for you. Let's just do this. Okay, so what I had before was, instead of this last step here just being a regular step, this was actually a platform about, let's just say 3.1 by, I think it was 30. So let's just change that to 30. So it was like this. So instead of this line being there, the way that you would walk down is that you would this would be a first step. So it's a landing, but this is actually a step down, and then you'd go down, 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 and out here. So, but the fact that this landing was a step meant that it actually had to be floating as well. And so where the cost for each step may have been somewhere in the range of $1,500 or $1,800 for these, for these fancy stairs. I mean, that's a lot of money per step, but these are supposed to be, floating or cantilevered and like a really cool feature. But just to give you a price difference, so while each of these would be $1,500 or $1,800, the landings would have been basically $6,000 or $5,500 to $6,000. And of course, in this design, I had one here at the top of the stairs, one here at the bottom of the stairs, and then another sort of same set, basically another one of these for the basement stairs. So 3 of these sort of floating landings. And so I had no idea that was basically adding on $18,000 of mostly unnecessary money that I could have been avoided with a layout change. So that is why I went and changed the layout to this, so that instead of stepping down onto a landing, you just walk over here on this solid floor and just step down from here. So it's a bit of a layout change, which I don't love, because now I'm losing a little bit of space where I could have, had a little bit of a wider cabinet. But really, we're only talking 9 inches. So for me to, lose out on 9 inches of space, but to save myself $18,000, I'm definitely doing it. So I'm still keeping this landing here, but instead of it being a floating landing, I'm actually just going to build it up so that it's more like a floating floor. So it's actually not going to be floating in terms of the way the others might be. And I'm not even sure I can necessarily afford that yet. I still am going back and forth on the budget, but it's not going to be the same way as I sort of envisioned it before in my head. So I'm going to do a modified version just so that I can have this layout without this needing to be an official floating one. So that's something really neat to know about stairs is even though you might want a particular layout, it really makes a difference on cost if you want a specific style of stairs. So that's something that I learned and I'm going to keep in mind. The next update that I want to share is that while my original plan was to do a little bit of an extension, I wanted to take over the front patio because we've already got the structure there, the foundational structure. We've already got foundation walls because of just the way that the house was built. And all I would need to do is build up. And I wanted to take over part of that little part of on the main floor and then the second floor as well. And unfortunately, the pricing of getting that done is just going to be too much per square foot to make it worthwhile. So we've decided to can that part of the project, which is disappointing, but it's not the end of the world. It just means I'm going to have a little smaller office, which is actually what I have already, so it's fine. And what we'll probably do is actually take over the bit of the main floor that I wanted to. We'll probably do that in a future project, so maybe another year or two down the line. The great news about that is that it's not going to impact anything greatly and in our current project, and it's not going to require any rework. So that's always my big sort of requirement is what's going to require rework and am I going to have to rip out stuff that I've already done. And with doing it this way, it means I'm not going to have to rip out anything that I've already fixed up. So I'm just going to leave the drywall in place and replace the rest of it. But on that wall, which will go one day, I will just leave the existing drywall. And that way I know it'll disappear soon. And so I can leave the window and everything else that's there. And so I'll just show you what it looks like here. So this on the right was my original one where it has this little bump out. And so in the interim year, basically, I think is what we're going to do. We're going to do the job this summer and then we might look at this for next year. So we'll just sort of cram the table in there and make it work with, it'll be a little bit busy and difficult to get around, but it's going to be doable and we'll just make it work. And I don't want to shorten the island or anything to give it more space. So I'm just going to leave it there and it'll be a little bit tight, but it'll be amazing. So we're going to continue on with this as the plan for now. And then, like I say, we'll look at it again for next summer. So part of the implication of this, what this means is that in order to do this plan, this would have caused a zoning variance. So what I was going to have to do is go and get a special permit, go through what they call a committee of adjustments, and it's basically a hearing where they're going to ask the neighbors if anyone has a problem, and it has to go through and get approved because it's I'm taking over this little extra piece of my own property as part of the house. And so that process, this whole committee of adjustments and everything, meant that the permit process would take 6 months. Now that I've decided not to do that, we're sticking within our own footprint, then the permit process can actually be done in a matter of weeks because all they need to approve is just the removal of walls. So there's going to be some structural things. So now that I can get the permit done in a matter of weeks, I started thinking about the project as a whole and thinking, okay, well, now we can actually potentially start sooner because we don't need to wait until the fall, until September to even start the project. We could actually start sooner. And once I got that in my head, I thought, well, let me look at the timeline again because we've got family that normally comes to visit in October. And we didn't know what we were going to do this year if we weren't going to start the project until September. Do we wait until after October and then start it? But then we're dealing with over the winter, which is just never a good time for renovations here when you're doing exterior work because we are doing some replacement windows and such. So then when you're dealing with masonry and everything, you have to then create warm spaces so that the masonry can dry properly. And, if you're pouring concrete or anything, just wintertime provides issues with that in our climate. So that was sort of our original thought process. And then once we realized that we could actually start a lot sooner based on this updated permit timing, I did a new timeline and I worked backwards from there. And I said, well, what if we could actually be done by October, by the time that the family is supposed to arrive. So I built a new timeline, which I will share with everybody to show you the difference and how I worked it back from that date and what that means. And I'll tell you what it means, though, is that we are actually going to potentially be starting construction in May, like mid-May. May 21st is the date that I have for a sort of construction start date, which is bonkers because that's only 2 months away. And I'm not even finished my renovation plan. So I'm not even sure that I can meet that date. But now all of a sudden I have got a bigger fire under my butt than I ever had before. And so I have got to get moving and finish up this reno plan so that I can figure out if I can even meet that date. So I'm doing things a little bit out of the normal sorts just because I'm managing this myself. The way that I teach it in Renovation Planning Academy is a little bit more linear because I want you to take the time, and because, you're going to typically hire a contractor. If you go that path, then you need to do it more linear because you need to be able to hand them a package. But because I'm planning this myself, and going to manage the construction myself, I'm kind of doing little pieces of this ahead of time and reaching out and sort of seeing if I can get some things scheduled in the meantime. I also have most of the plan done, so I can reach out with specific questions, but I do need to finish up my SHEP plans this week so that I can go out and get quotes on those items. I need to get the drawings back from the architect now that I've already handed them my drawings, so they're just doing formal construction drawings based on my proposed layout. So they're working on those. So once I get those back, then I can hand those over to some different structural companies to try and get quotes and book in resources for that. So it's just all happening at once, which is crazy, but it's going to happen. And I think it's going to be really, really exciting. So those are my big updates. So I have got a huge week ahead of me. As I mentioned, I've got to finish off my SHEP plans so that I can go and get final quotes and actually book in some resources. I've got to finish off all of my product purchasing or finish choosing basically and actually start buying some finishes. I did get my order in for the door. My back patio door, because that actually has a 6-month lead time. That's the longest one out of everything that I have to buy. That is the single biggest thing with the longest lead time. So I've ordered that, and that is scheduled to arrive basically end of August, sort of beginning of September, somewhere in that time frame. So that's what I'm working towards. I've got to have everything else done and ready to go to have that. That's my one date that I'm working towards. And if I can get all of the other work done ahead of time, once I get that door in and then the other couple of windows, then the whole house will be sealed in again, and then I can finish the interior and, hopefully wrap up a bunch of this stuff within a month, because it might be possible. I have no idea, but we're going to try and find out. So I've got a big week ahead of me, and I will be back here with another update for you next Monday. So have a great week, and I'll talk to you later.